Yes, sir.
And when you wrote on or about July 31st, a second notice was received along with the second copy of BWC. The
Yes, sir.
city police department had the BWC video of Officer Mulero at all times, didn't it?
And again, I can't say that they did, because again, we were having issues with that view. This is the program that we discussed about view having some issues as far as reviewing and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm getting at. I think what I just heard Mr. Desrosiers try to imply is that the city got this video, the 6-minute 58-second video, from a law firm when they got it in the letter of July 11th. Or the implication was that I got, and I want to see if you agree, was that the city got the video from outside the agency and didn't know about the 6-minute and 58-second video until it received it from the outside. Was that your understanding?
The city is willing to stipulate to that.
Okay. Is that your understanding as to what Mr. Desrosiers was saying, sir?
So can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
And I heard Alex just say that the city is stipulating that they only got the video from the outside. Did you hear him use the word stipulate a moment ago?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That means that the city is taking the position that it received the video solely from the outside, the 6-minute and 58-second video.
Well, for what I understand, it was actually brought to their attention at that time.
I think you may have just answered my next question, brought to their attention. The point is that the city police department has possession of every officer's BWC videos because that's where they come from. They're issued equipment, correct?
Yes.
So it's preposterous to think that the city got this video from outside the agencies. Would you agree with that?
Objection. Argumentative.
Response?
So in response to that.
No, hold on, Lieutenant Milan.
Yes,
I'm asking counsel to respond to the objection.
Yes, sir.
Characterization of the question was argumentative.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that you rephrase because the
okay, I'll rephrase the question.
Of preposterous is clearly argumentative.
Okay. Lieutenant Milan, Mr. Desrosiers on behalf of the city is now telling us that the city's position by stipulation is that it is claiming that it received the video, the 6-minute and 58-second video from outside the agency. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, based on your experience as a law enforcement officer, does that even sound possible?
Again, we're talking about a program which we had issues with. The fact that it could have been, Sergeant Estes looked into it and he couldn't find the video, that's a good possibility as well.
But the video is made or recorded from the equipment on the police officer's body. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. And again, I'm just discussing the issues that we had with ViewView, where there's glitches where at times you would try to log into that, to a video and you couldn't pull it up. So
you're drawing the distinction. I think what I'm hearing is when the city may have learned of the video and where they finally found the video. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
But you're talking about within the department and possible technical glitches within the department. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. You understand that Mr. Desrosiers is telling us, which is news to me for the very first time, that the city is contending they didn't even know about this video, nor did it exist until it was sent to them from an outside law firm. Do you understand that?
I understand that. Yes, sir.
And what I'm asking you as a law enforcement officer, you don't agree with that, do you? Because this video came from the equipment issued to Officer Mulero. It's a recording from his BWC, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. And the video again that was deleted that he asked you about, Exhibit 26, our Exhibit 26, was the video of the interview of Mr. Kidd, correct?
Correct.
I don't have anything further.
Okay, Lieutenant Milan, I do have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
And as is my practice, if I ask any questions of a witness, I then open it back up to allow counsel to ask questions limited solely to the areas that I've asked about. All right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In the final version of the investigative report, there were 5 charges that were levied against and you found as sustained against Officer Mulero. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the last 2 were ones that were specifically identified to you by Deputy Chief Batten in a conversation the 2 of you had, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the deputy chief emailed the chief with Union Exhibit 31 saying, we're adding these 2 additional charges, right? You remember that?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
When was the grievant formally placed on notice that there were additional charges being brought against him in connection with this investigation?
Can you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. When was the grievant, Mr. Mulero, placed on notice that there were 2 additional charges being brought against him in connection with this internal affairs investigation?
We notified that the investigation is actually completed, and in that form, it specifies that there's actually additional charges on there.
So in the internal affairs investigation, I guess that's Union Exhibit 13, the final report. That's the first time that the grievant was placed on notice of the 2 additional charges?
So I believe that was the final notice. We have what we call we actually hand out a form basically saying that the investigation has been concluded and these are the findings. And that's when they have the opportunity to go into doing these show cause, which ultimately we provide a final notice of what the sustained violations are.
I appreciate that you give notice to the grievant of the outcome of the investigation. That's not my question. My question is, when did the city tell Officer Mulero that instead of 3 or perhaps the original 4 charges that he was initially placed on notice about, that instead the 2 additional charges, I guess concerning interviewing witnesses and that kind of stuff, that those 4th and 5th charges he was being investigated about?
To be honest with you, I don't have any documentation on that, sir.
Okay. Separate from documentation, do you have any recollection of when during the course of the internal affairs investigation you told the grievant he was being investigated as to those other 2 items?
I do not.
All right, so those are all the questions I have for you, sir. Because the union called you as a witness, I'll give them first bite at the apple.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Chris, was this, you said I could ask something?
Union goes first, yes, sir.
Okay.
But only related to the things that I asked about just now.
To follow up on Mr. Schulman's question as the arbitrator, I just want to ask you, sir, if you'll turn to Exhibit 9, Union Exhibit 9.
Let me pull that up. All right, this is Union Exhibit 9.
Okay, thank you. Lieutenant, let me know when you can see that.
I can see it.
Okay, is this the document called a Notice of Investigation, or NOI, by which an officer is typically placed on notice of the charges that he or she is facing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And to follow on Mr. Schulman's question, in this document, there were 4 charges, but not the And that fourth charge was ultimately not included in your final report, correct? They 1.8.15,
Correct.
but at least he was put on notice of that charge, right?
Yes, sir.
And now if you go to your exhibit 13 as the report that you prepared, on the face of it, this is your final report. This has the 5 charges that Mr. Schulman was asking you about, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have, to follow up on Mr. Schulman's question, do you have any document that you have seen that placed Officer Mulero on notice of these 2 charges until he received this final report?
No, sir.
I have nothing further, Mr. Schulman. Thank you.
All right, I'll hear from the city.
Nothing further from the city.
All right, thank you very much. Lieutenant Milan, you're excused, sir.
Thank you, sir. You all have a great day.
We hope you recover your health or don't actually take ill from the disease, sir.
Thank you so much. Truly appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, Union will call its next witness.
May we have just a moment, sir? We're strategizing on whether we need to call anyone else.
All right, we'll take a short break.
Just a couple minutes.
5 minutes or less.
Okay, yes, sir. that you made a request?
Yeah. We're open.
Okay. It's called V-View.
Yes.
V, the letter V. Okay.
Okay, folks, are we ready to go back on the record?
Yes.
All right, we're back on the record. You will call the next witness.
Okay. Mr. Schulman, I have two, and I think they'll be very brief witnesses. One is we're going to call business agent Greg Cook, who's seated right here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought there was more to that. All right, so
sorry.
is there some way that we can get Mr. Cook and Mr.
Yeah,
Mulero to
yes,
swap
please,
seats during the testimony? Thank you. Okay, was there something else you were going to say, Mr. Wilson, or are you ready?
No, yes, if you want to swear him in, we'll.
All right, Mr. Cook, please raise your right hand. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Would you please give me your full name and its correct spelling?
Gregory B. Cook, Gregory Cook.
All right, thank you. Your witness, counsel.
Okay. Mr. Cook, are you a former law enforcement officer?
I'm retired from Fort Orange Police Department, yes, sir.
Okay. And what is your current role or capacity for the union?
I work as the business agent for the union, UPA.
And in that role or capacity, are you called upon to sometimes make public records requests?
Yes, sir.
And have you made public records requests in the case involving Officer Mulero?
Yes, sir, I did. I did a public records request for several of the emails that we have in our exhibits to include the Axon BWC audit trail. And I also requested in that same public records request to Mr. Hayward, a V-View audit trail, which is the same thing. It just shows when that video was accessed, looked at, who looked at it.
Now, you heard Lieutenant Milan say that they were having some problems with the V-View and that he's not sure if this BWC recording of the incident of September 14, 2017 was on V-View or not. Do you recall that?
My understanding is the incident would have been recorded on V-View during that time frame.
Okay.
That would be Officer Mulero's video. To date, though, we have not received the V-View audit trail as requested.
Okay. And if we had received the audit trail for it, would it be something similar, or at least you would have expected it to be similar to Exhibit 27, which is the Axon video trail that we see?
Yes, sir. It's my understanding. I haven't seen the actual V-View audit trail, so it is my understanding from speaking with people that have seen it that would be correct. It would have the same kind of date and timestamp and who looked at and accessed the video.
And what was the basis for the union seeking that audit trail of the video view?
That would allow us to, based on the 20-second video or when it was accessed, it would at least allow us to go back and look and see if this video was actually accessed or after May 24th, or if it was not. It would allow us to see what happened and who accessed that video.
And would it also be able to, would it tell you by the identity of the person who clicked in to view it?
To my understanding, that is correct.
So like Exhibit 27, which we showed Lieutenant Milan viewing that one video 34 times, are you saying that your understanding it would have something similar to that in showing who accessed it and who reviewed it?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
And that's called the V-view?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
And that's V-VUE was what I was told.
Okay. And in the report that Lieutenant Milan, his ultimate final report, Exhibit 13 on page 2, where it speaks of several members of the command staff in the second paragraph supposedly reviewing this 20-second video, is it your contention that that's what the V-View audit trail would show?
Well, the VView audit trail would show when it was, so since it was a criminal case, it would have had been sent to the state attorney's office and the defense attorney's office. So it would have advised, or it would have showed us who sent those to those two areas, because the evidence custodian would have had to send that out
Okay.
Okay.
And you said you're retired from the Port Orange Police Department.
Yes, sir.
How many years did you serve in law enforcement?
21, 10 years at Port Orange and then 10 at the jail, or 11 at the jail.
11 at the jail,
Yes,
Volusia County Jail?
yes, sir.
Okay. Just last area I want to ask you about. You heard Lieutenant, well, strike that. You've been present through today's testimony as well as day one, correct?
Yes, sir.
A few minutes ago, you heard Mr. Desrosiers on behalf of the city use the word stipulate that they contend that the video, the 6-minute 58-second video, was given to the city from the outside, meaning from that law office.
Correct.
Based on what you know, not only about this case, but your experience as a law enforcement officer, what is your response to that as to whether that sounds possible?
Well, the city, especially the police department, is required, I think it's GS2 that covers the law enforcement records retention schedule. So they have to keep all the videos and audio recordings or anything else. If there's any kind of litigation or administrative hearing, they are bound to keep that till the conclusion.
Okay.
And that's in, I think it's GS2SL, I believe.
You're describing, is that a administrative rule?
That's from Florida for records retention for all municipalities in the state. And I believe it's even in their policy.
And is that something you have some familiarity with? You dealt with that before, the records retention?
The records retention, because it tells you how long you're supposed to keep it. Some items are 3 years, some are 5 years, some are until the officer, 25 years after the officer retires.
Okay.
And the GS2 is specific to the police department.
The BWC video that we have seen, the 6-minute 58-second video, it came from equipment that was issued to Officer Mulero, is that correct?
Yes.
So from your understanding and experience, who would have retained that video?
So I can speak on the Axon BWC because I have experience with that. The officer comes in, they take off their camera and they put it on a docking system. The docking system loads it into whatever the operating system is, VView or BWC, and then that's put into the cloud. Now and saved into the cloud. So Axon has their own cloud, and that's where they spend their money as far as retention. With that, I lost my train of thought. So they would have had to have that on there.
Okay. So if this law firm had a copy of the video from Officer Mulero's city-issued BWC,
Yes.
can you think of any way that the law firm could have gotten that video except from requesting it of the city?
No, even the state attorney's office has to request the link for the BWC for the criminal case itself. So they have to be provided with that as well, and the defense attorney for defense.
Okay. I have nothing further, Mr. Cook.
Just 1 second.
Mr. Drozier, you're still on mute.
I had double muted for protection, both my phone and the screen. I apologize. Mr. Cook, when is it that you became affiliated with the city of DeLand through the union, the IUPA?
To the city of DeLand, I want to say 2019. I took over for
2019,
Bob. I took over for Bob Walker. Yes.
So that would be 2 years after the incident with Mr. Kidd and at least a year after, or about a year after the termination of Mr. Mulero. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And you testified earlier about the V-View system. When is the last time that you, as a police officer, used the V-View system?
Like I said, I've never used the VView system, but it was my understanding from speaking with other officers from DeLand that it was similar in nature to the Axon BWC.
Okay. But it would be fair to say that none of your testimony about the V-View system is based on personal knowledge?
No, sir, because I didn't get the public records.
Thank you. That's it. No further questions.
Had myself muted. Any redirect?
No, sir.
Okay. While I have no questions for this witness, Mr. Wilson, do you anticipate submitting Union Exhibit 27 into evidence?
Oh, my apologies. I had thought that was, I had moved for admission of that. My apologies that I did not, but yes, we would like to move for Union Exhibit 27 into evidence.
All right. Any objection?
No objection from the city.
All right. It's accepted as Union Exhibit 27.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Union will call their next witness.
Before I call this last and final witness, I have a question of you, Mr. Schulman. My understanding of listening to the part of the recap of day one was that I held off on my cross-examination of Mr. Mulero when Mr. Wood was finished questioning. So I intended to just have some limited cross and then one question or one final area that would be in the form of redirect. I'm sorry, of rebuttal witness. May I cover both within his testimony that I'm about to ask?
Okay. So I'm trying to recall you, and I didn't remember until you just mentioned. So you're saying that on the first day, Ms. Mulero, you had cross-examination, but we deferred it either for scheduling reasons.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Okay. And so you want to do your cross-examination of your client, and then you want to ask him questions in rebuttal?
Yes.
You want to do it all at once?
Yes, sir. And I was hopeful that to streamline this, that this won't open the door to testimony you heard on day one and going back into videos and things. My cross is going to be limited to just a few areas, and then one area that Lieutenant Milan spoke about today.
Okay. So since we're talking about cross-examination, you'll do your cross, and then the city's redirect of Mr. Mulero will be limited to the area, the scope of your cross. However, to the extent that you're asking new questions about in rebuttal, well, the city has the opportunity to engage in cross-examination as it would ordinarily as to that new information.
Yes,
So what
sir.
I will ask for you to do, sir, is to ask your questions in cross-examination.
Okay.
And then when you're done with those questions, then go ahead, let us all know you're done and now you're moving into rebuttal. And then that way, the city will know which parts it's supposed to limit its redirect to. And then, of course, it has broader scope on cross-examination. Is that acceptable?
Yes, sir.
May I be heard on this?
You may, sir.
So my understanding, because I made the suggestion at the time, was that the union had the choice of cross-examining Mr. Mulero on day one after I was finished questioning him, or alternatively, recalling him as a witness in their case because they were going to present a case of their own. My understanding was that Mr. Wilson had opted for door number 2 and would just recall Mr. Mulero in the union's case. So I'm hearing a scenario now where Mr. Wilson wants to cross-examine his witness as part of day one and then open new issues. It was our intent that Mr. DeRochers was going to cross-examine Mr. Mulero in response to his direct testimony in the union's case. But if Mr. Wilson's planning to present him and you're planning to allow him to do it in 2 ways, then my question for you, Mr. Schulman, is, would that mean that I have the opportunity to ask follow-up questions of Mr. Mulero on the cross-examination that his attorney's going to ask him, and then Mr. DeRochers can cross-examine him on the direct questions? We certainly weren't trying to do that, but my understanding is that the union was just going to present Mr. Mulero in their case as a witness, and that this was not cross-examination.
Well, if I may be heard, Mr. Shulman, maybe I have a way to streamline this. The video clip that I watched yesterday was right before Mr. Ployce was called by the city, and you said something to the effect, Mr. Shulman. So I understand the city, that the union is going to hold off on its cross of Mr. Mulero until we reconvene. What I can do, maybe as a compromise to what Mr. Wood is saying, I could just, I'll ask my few questions on direct, and then I'll transition to the rebuttal issue. So long as the cross-examination by either Mr. Wood or Mr. DeRochers isn't going back into everything we heard on day one. I mean, in other words, if the cross is limited to my direct, which I assume it would be. Okay.
Well, I mean, first off, I have not reviewed any clips, so I don't remember specifically what was said, and I don't have anything in my notes on that point. My apologies about that. My memory is not what it was 20 years ago. Second is that really at this point, ordinarily, if you were to put your client on, then and adduce evidence on direct examination, then the city would have the opportunity to engage in reasonably broad cross-examination related to what you asked him about, as well as addressing any typical issues that are asked of a witness on cross-examination concerning, for example, credibility or ability to remember things and that kind of thing. So I'm inclined to say let's just go with that typical approach, and then of course in terms of providing rebuttal, well, you'll have rebuttal on redirect. You'll have the opportunity on redirect, Mr. Wilson, to ask your client the grievance those questions. Now, having said that, I will tell you we're getting a transcript of day one eventually in this case, and it is 2:15, and we're ending around 5, right?
Yes,
so I really will ask the city to limit, if it can, going over stuff that we've already gone over from day one. I mean, I don't need that. I'm going to read the transcript. You folks are going to do either oral argument or post-hearing briefs. I'm sure you'll point out to me the things that I need, and I just don't need to hear the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
So against that backdrop, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Wilson, to place Mr. Mulero. Assuming you want to present his testimony, you'll do a direct, and then the city will have one of its lawyers conduct a cross-examination, and then you'll have an opportunity to do rebuttal questioning of Mr. Mulero. Is that acceptable to the parties?
Acceptable.
Okay, then let's
Yes,
move
sir.
forward. Very good. Mr. Mulero, please raise your right hand. Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please proceed with questioning.
Thank you. Mr. Mulero, you explained yourself, I recall, in quite detail to Mr. Wood's questions on day one on July 30th. So I'm not going to go back into a lot of that detail. What I want to ask you about, though, sir, is, first of all, you were an officer for how many years with the city of DeLand? Close to 6. Close to 6. Okay. The videos that Mr. Wood played for you that were compiled by Lieutenant Milan at the request of City Manager Ployce, were you given the opportunity at any time to come back and explain yourself in regards to your actions on those videos?
No, sir, I was never
Okay.
questioned by anybody.
And were you, I know those 4 to 5 situations that Mr. Wood played when we were up in DeLand that day on video, were you counseled by a supervisor in regards to your handling of yourself in any of those situations?
No, sir, I was not.
Did you receive any form of discipline, whether it be a verbal counseling or written reprimand or anything for any of those incidents?
No, sir, I was not.
When you conducted yourself in the course of your interactions with those citizens that are revealed on City Exhibit 52, were you conducting yourself in the manner in which you had been trained?
Yes, sir.
I understand that Chief Umberger came in I believe the mid 2017. Is that correct?
I want to say so.
Or
yes,
mid
sir.
2018, I
I think
believe.
it was 27, somewhere around there.
And you understand that you heard his testimony. He may have a different philosophy and approach to how he views community policing. Do you recall him talking about that?
Yes, sir, I do.
But you were never counseled about those situations that were depicted on the video that were shown to Mr. Cloyce.
No, sir.
Now, the incident at issue, there's been a lot said today about that 6-minute, 58-second video. Was that the video that came from your BWC?
Yes, sir.
And at the end of a shift, what do you do with that?
I am to, at the end of the shift, I always dock it before we go home. That is policy. Although, in a case like this, we have evidence that we have to put in after the situation. So if, for example, after this arrest, if I had any type of evidence, which I did as my video, I would have to dock it every single time after. So the video always gets downloaded, whether it's at the end of the shift or right after the incident that requires evidence.
Okay. And did you enjoy your job as a police officer for the city, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
Would you like to have that job back?
I would rather any of them more than that, sir.
And in your last two evaluations with the city, which we have as Exhibit 24, I'm sorry, yes, 24. Seen these evaluations before?
Yes, sir, I had to sign them.
And it appears that you received an exceed standard rating on the first one, which would have been for, let's see if it has the year on it.
You should.
You signed it in September of 2017, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the one that follows it is Exhibit 24. You received an exceed standard rating as well?
Yes, sir.
And was that your 2016 evaluation?
Yep. Yes, sir.
And then the one behind it is your 2015 evaluation, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what rating did you receive?
Exceed standard again.
And is this merit, there's a certificate of achievement. That's the last exhibit of page of Exhibit 24, Mr. Schulman.
Yeah, well, that's
You want Exhibit 24 up?
Yes, sir, the last page.
Give me just a moment, please.
that was for that, though. That's not just a plus of 18.
There we are, sir.
Thank you. And is this a certificate of achievements you received for completing that course on negotiations, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you admitted, you recall on day one of the arbitration, you admitted to Mr. Wood that if you had it to do over again, you wouldn't have raised your voice and gotten as agitated as you did.
Yes, sir.
You recall that?
Yes, sir.
So you acknowledge that, correct?
Yes, sir.
But it's your contention through your grievance and appeal all the way up through this arbitration, is it that you don't believe you should have been terminated? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And your discipline up to the time of this termination, I know you had some discipline for speeding and a crash. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was, but was that under a different chief?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But the allegations that were raised against you in this particular IA and sustained in Exhibit 13, you had never been accused of these violations before, had you, sir?
No, sir, my demeanor has never been in question.
That's the conclusion of my direct question, sir. I've got a little bit for the rebuttal that I could hold off on following cross if that's the preference, Mr. Schulman.
Well, we're going to have you do, this is in the nature of direct examination. Do you have any further direct examination questions for your client?
I have no
The
further
grievance,
direct
I should say.
examination.
Okay, then we'll move to cross-exam.
If it's all right with you, could we take a short break, 5 minutes, no more?
Preferably no more. All right, 5 minutes. We're off the record.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I think he wasn't happy with them. Hey, by the way, Benton, can you hear me? Benton?
Yeah.
The arbitrator's
Yeah.
not on yet, but I was gonna say, if you can roll into the picture here for a second, all we see is you dressed in black. You look kind of like Johnny Cash.
This was intentional. I was trying to be dark today. So Johnny Cash, huh? All right.
The same thing. You good resemblance to Johnny Cash, the man in black right there.
All right.
I don't mean that as a compliment too. I mean, you're looking sharp. Oh, Funyuns. I don't think I've seen those in years.
I want to tell you that.
Johnny Cash.
The name's Cash. Just make it out to Cash.
All right, let's go back on the record.
Yes, sir.
The city has no questions on cross at this time.
Okay. Well, if there's no cross, then I guess there's no rebuttal, right?
our rebuttal relates to the Lieutenant Milan. That's why I broke my questioning up and said I have nothing further on cross. Or I'm sorry,
Okay,
direct.
I was trying really hard to be clear that we were just doing the whole questioning. So I'm going to allow you to ask questions of your witness
Okay.
of the grievant, and then I'm going to give the city
Okay.
an opportunity to cross-examine your client on that.
I'm sorry if I misunderstood you, Mr. Shulman. My apologies. That's why I said at the end, I'm done with my direct. I could go into my rebuttal, and maybe that's where there was a slight delay in what I said, but my apologies.
Okay, so regardless of the cause of the confusion, which I'll take the blame for, that's fine. You may ask the grievant
Okay.
questions that are in the nature of rebuttal of of Lieutenant Milan. The
Okay.
city will have an opportunity to cross-examine Mr.
Sure.
Mulero on those things. Then you'll have an opportunity to complete with redirect on that particular point. But then we're done with questioning of this witness.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And Mr. Mulero, you're still under oath, sir.
Sorry, yes, sir.
All right, Lieutenant Mulero, Lieutenant Mulero, Officer Mulero, you were present during the testimony of Lieutenant Milan today,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
I want to ask you just about one issue and that, or one area of questions that I asked of Lieutenant Milan. Do you recall when I asked him about the two of you running into each other at church?
Yes, sir.
First of all, do you recall approximately when that occurred?
It was sometime before my separation date and after, before my separation date and after I was put on admin leave, somewhere around there. I couldn't tell you.
Okay. And for the record, it looks like you were put on admin leave on July 26th
2018.
of 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then we know that your affidavit of separation, which is our Exhibit 30, indicates that you were let go on December 3rd of 2018.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
So somewhere in that 4.5 month window of 2018 is when you ran into Mr. Lieutenant Milan at church.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall that I asked him about a conversation that he had with you about specifically his IA report,
Yes, sir.
which is Exhibit 13 dated 10/25/18. Tell us and tell the arbitrator in your own words the sum and substance of what you recall of that conversation.
That was the first time that I'd seen Lieutenant Milan since I don't even know. And I ran into him at church. I walked up to him because I wanted to know what the status of my investigation was. I just wanted to know what was going on. He seemed upset because he says to me, you know, I hate that this is happening to you. I don't like this. And I wish that it was different. You know, I want you to know that in my part, I didn't find you guilty of anything. And I've been told to change this several times. And I tried asking him why, and he wouldn't go into further. And I just remember him being apologetic about it. And, you know, I asked him at that point, I felt fear for my job. And I asked him to write me a letter of recommendation if it ever went to that point. And he said that he would. And that was the last time that I saw him.
Okay. So he, correct me if I'm wrong, he said something to the effect that he had been asked to change his report a few times?
Yes, sir.
Did he tell you how many times he had been asked to change his report?
He said about a couple of times. That's what he said.
And did he discuss with you what charges he was being asked to change?
No, sir.
He didn't go into any of the
No,
substance.
sir. He just mentioned that that he felt bad and that this is not what he wanted.
Okay. Did Lieutenant Milan indicate to you who was requesting or pressuring or in any way, shape, or form having him change his findings?
No, sir.
Did you ask him who was behind it?
I did. I asked who, and he just shook his head. He was like, I can't. He just wouldn't tell me anything further.
Okay. And you said he seemed, I know you're describing his demeanor, but he seemed, I believe your word was kind of disappointed or upset.
He was upset and disappointed. You know, he mentioned that we had no kind of friendship, but that's incorrect. You know, Sergeant Milan, at that time he was sergeant, and Sergeant Milan was one of the guys that was most driven towards me in regards to becoming canine. And you know, he was always telling me every time he would hear something positive about me. Me and my zone partner, Officer Bice, would come and sit in his office for hours and joke around all kinds of stuff. So it was hard for me to hear that there was no friendship, but that's besides the point. But
You mean today when he said that?
yeah, when he said that. But that day, I could tell that he was just disappointed because he knew something that I didn't know, which it ended up being that I was going to be terminated.
Okay. And you've now seen through the evidence that there were 3 different versions of his report, correct?
Yeah, which was what I said to you earlier, that it was very surprising to me because I didn't even notice that. When you brought it up today, was the first time that I actually noticed.
But is that, now that you see the 3 versions of his report, does that now square with him telling you that he was asked to change the report?
Yes, sir.
And you said that he helped support you to become canine officer?
Yes, sir. Anything that I needed equipment wise, you know, I didn't have to jump through the hoops that other people had to do. I come to him and tell him, Sarge, this is what I needed. This is why I needed. And he did whatever he needed to do on his part to get the equipment that I needed.
I have nothing further, Mr. Sholin. I think it hit mute on you, sir, or something.
Cross-exam.
Just a few questions. So, Mr. Mulero, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that this alleged meeting in church took place sometime between when you were placed on administrative leave and when you were terminated from your employment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what church is that?
It's Church Trinity and Deltona.
Trinity. And do you regularly go to that church?
Yes, sir.
So you disagree with Lieutenant Milan's testimony that he rarely, if ever, sees you there?
Well, I don't know that what days or times he goes. I go there with my family, with my daughters, and there's 3, depending on what type of event it's going on, there could be anywhere from 1 to 3 different mass. So
Okay.
I couldn't tell you.
Sure. So on this particular day, who did you go to church with?
I'm sorry?
Who did you go to church with?
Who did you go to church with on this day that we're talking about?
It was my ex-wife, and my 2 daughters.
Okay. And who was Lieutenant Milan with?
His wife, that I can recall, I don't remember anybody else.
Okay. And at what point during or before or after the church service did you approach Lieutenant Milan?
It was the conclusion of the service at the end when we were walking out.
Okay. And did you approach him alone, or was your family with you at the time?
My ex-wife was present with me at the time.
So she was present for the entire conversation between you and Lieutenant Milan?
No, not the entire conversation.
So at what point did she leave during this conversation?
She left at some point while he was telling me parts of what was going on. I couldn't tell you exactly at what point she left. I know she left to go get the girls.
Okay, so the reason that she left was to go get the girls. So the girls weren't with you during this conversation?
No, the girls, children go to a separate mass or they have their own kid. The adult side of it, it's in a different location.
Like a youth side or something like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so she is with you, your wife is, or ex-wife at this time, is with you at the beginning of this conversation, and at some point she leaves to go get your daughters.
That's correct.
Okay, and about how long did this conversation last?
If I told you an exact time, I'd be lying, but I mean, it could have gone anywhere from about 5 minutes, maybe approximately.
Okay, and was Lieutenant Milan's wife with him for the duration of this conversation?
I don't recall it. No, at some point it was just him and I. I don't recall if she was there, you know, while the entire conversation. I know that at some point it was just him and I.
Okay, and so you say that Lieutenant Milan told you that he had not found you innocent, I suppose, but, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm mischaracterizing, of the allegations against you. That's your testimony. That's what he told you, correct?
That's correct.
And you followed up on that and you asked him, well, what's happening? Is that correct?
Correct, and he didn't go any further.
Okay, so what else did you do in response to try to elicit an answer from him?
I
If
didn't.
anything.
I tried asking him, and he refused to really. He didn't verbally refuse, but he just wouldn't go any further. And that's when I went on to say, well, you know, if it gets to a not favorable point to me, is there any way that you would be willing to write me a letter of recommendation? And he said yes, and that was it.
Okay, and at any point prior to today, did you raise this argument with anybody?
Raise this argument as, what do you mean?
Well, you eventually were terminated from your employment, correct?
Correct.
And you went through the grievance process, correct?
Correct.
At any point, whether it was the show cause hearing or the grievance process, did you raise this issue with anybody?
Other than the union, no.
So you informed the union of this prior to you grieving this issue, your termination?
I don't recall when I brought it up.
So, but you would agree then that this today is the very first time that you have made mention of it, of this argument at any point in these proceedings, whether it is the show cause hearing, the grievance process, or the first day of the arbitration, correct?
And any other proceedings, yes, I would agree that today is the first time that it's being brought up. But the union has been aware of that statement whenever I recall bringing it up. I just don't know exactly when.
Okay. I have no more questions.
Redirect.
Yeah, one of the last questions that Mr. Rosers asked you was about when you or how you raised this issue of this conversation in church. Did Lieutenant Milan tell you that if you ever brought this up, he would deny it?
Yes.
Tell that to the arbitrator in your own words, how he said that.
He basically just, whenever that conversation happened, he said that he would deny that it ever happened because it obviously would put him in a situation where he is lying on the report. So it was very upsetting to me. And then on top of it, for him to say it today that we weren't friends, it just.
And did you hear Lieutenant Milan do the very thing that he told you at church if you ever brought it up? That is, that he would deny it. Did you hear him deny it today?
Yes, sir.
And Lieutenant Milan is still employed with the city, working under Chief Umberger, correct?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further.
Okay, so union will call our next witness.
At this time, the union rests.
Okay. Does the city wish to present a case in rebuttal?
We'd we'd like a couple minutes to talk about it, sir.
All right, I have at 2:40. Will 5 minutes suffice, or do you need longer?
How about 10?
All right, we'll take
We
10
may not need
minutes.
that long.
Okay, we'll take 10 minutes. If we're all back before then, we'll get started then. We're now adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, folks.
Yes, sir.
It's 2:50. Are we ready to get started?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at this point, does the city wish to present a case in rebuttal?
No, it does not.
Okay. All right. Then let's go off the record briefly. Okay. So as I understand correctly, the parties have agreed you're going to do post-hearing briefs in this matter. I presume we'll need to figure out the schedule for that. So I presume it's going to be a certain amount of time after we receive the transcripts. So Ms. Riggs, how quickly could we get the transcripts in this case without incurring any sort of rush fee?
I was going to ask for 30 days if I could have it.
Okay. So today's mid-November, that means mid-December. You folks want to be writing briefs over the winter holidays and New Year?
You can't go anywhere anyway.
Well, that is a wise point. My wife and I just canceled our plans to go up north for Christmas. So yeah, there you go.
Me too. Me too.
But what are your thoughts in terms of when we might, wind up with the briefs and the like? I assume it'll be a certain amount of time after the transcript is received.
Yeah.
How about 30 days after receipt of the transcripts? And, when those come in, just have some group acknowledgement on an email that they're in, and therefore the briefs are due whatever 30 days from that is. And then we'll all give it the college try and try to finish our briefs within that time period. And
I don't think we oppose that. My only slight situation is I do have something with my family planned that MLK weekend, which I think is it's always mid-January. And so if the 30 days from receipt of from Ms. Riggs of the transcript puts us on the Friday before or the Tuesday after, maybe so. But if there can be just maybe a tad bit of flexibility of a week if need be around that.
Well, I will say we will be very flexible with Gary's schedule. If he needs an extension, we understand that. If you want to set a realistic date now, we can do that. But stuff happens in both of our worlds. So
I'm fine with 30 days from receipt of the transcript, and then see what date that is, and then maybe between Benton and I, Mr. Schulman, like I said, if it's right around that midweek or that weekend, maybe we can push it out amongst the two of us, and then let you know if we're pushing it out 4 or 5 days either way.
That's fine, or we can just set the briefs to be due January 22nd, which is the Friday after MLK Day.
Okay.
Right? If you get them sooner, okay. And what I'll do is I'll simply, if you get them done sooner and you want to get them to me so it's out of your hopper and in mine, that's fine. I'll hold on to them and not read them until I get the second one, or we have the or the deadline hits, in which case once I get them, I'll make sure both sides have each other. Does that work?
Yeah, January 22nd.
So you will do the exchange?
Then I'll do the exchange.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So
how would you like us to email them to you, to send copies? What's your?
Oh, I don't want paper. Send them to me as a PDF, please.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, Mr. Schulman, to clarify something you said, and I believe Ben did, we send them to you, and then you will distribute them back, the opposing side, to us?
That's correct. That way, in the event, neither side is disadvantaged by submitting their brief before the due date.
Okay.
I'm not going to read them until I have both briefs anyway, or the deadline hits. But
Okay.
I will then go ahead and reply to both sides. You'll have those briefs at that point.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Trying to think if there's anything else we need to address. I mean, I'll go over the exhibits back on the record. Ms. Riggs, I presume you're going to need instruction from the parties as to ordering of the transcript on the record?
Please, and one other thing, I have this, the city's exhibits, but I don't have any of the union's exhibits. Would it be possible for me to get an email of those?
Yes, I will forward you all of them by email. I think Ms. Riggs, I'm not even sure I have your email address, but have you sent us something already, or?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you want to give me yours, and I'll make sure we get them to you.
Yeah, it's B as in boy, RIGGS at vrcreporters.com.
Was that V as in Victor?
Yes.
Okay, VRC.
vrcreporters.com.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, is this the V view that y'all were talking about?
Yeah.
Is this how that is spelled for the cameras?
Greg?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so.
I mean, it looks like it's
Okay.
body worn cameras.
Yes.
Like,
I have seen just the V dash view, but that makes sense. That looks like it. Yeah.
I find it interesting that they're now part of the Axon network. So I guess Axon is buying all that stuff up, right?
Sure.
Okay. So VIEVU is what was on that website. All right. Then let's go back on the record. All right. So during a brief off-the-record conversation, counsel and I discussed the timing of the transcripts and the post-hearing briefs. So first off, the parties are ordering the preparation of the transcript in this matter. I'm to receive an electronic copy of it. The parties will make arrangements as to who's getting the original or the copies, or if they're splitting the cost, they'll leave that up to them. But I'll ask this now, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wood, Mr. Rozier, is that correct in terms of the parties are ordering the transcript, and likewise as to payment arrangements?
That is correct, and we had previously agreed to split the cost.
Is that correct from the city?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so we're going to ask the court reporter to prepare the transcript as soon as practicable without incurring any rush charges. She's indicated that's probably about 30 days or so from now. Based on that, the parties shall have up to and including January 22nd, 2021 to submit their post-hearing briefs to me in electronic form, PDF preferred, ideally PDF text embedded. Likewise, that's the format in which I would prefer to receive the transcript. If either party should wind up sending the brief to me before that date, I will not review it. I will simply hold on to it. And then when I receive the other of the two briefs, or once the expiration of the January 22nd deadline is hit, I will simply go ahead and send the email to both parties attaching the copies of the briefs that I've received. I'd like to briefly go over the exhibits that I understand are admitted into evidence, so that you folks are all aware. And Mr. Wilson has agreed to forward to the court reporter PDF copies of the union's exhibits. What I have are Arbitrator Exhibit 1, City Exhibits 1 through 40, 42, and 44 through 52-6. For union exhibits, I have 1 through 31. Those are what I show as having been admitted into evidence. Is that the union's understanding of the exhibits that have been admitted into evidence? Mr. Wilson, is that
Oh,
the
I'm
union's
sorry.
understanding?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And could I just have you repeat again, 44 through what for the city?
44 through 52-6. There were 6 video clips that comprise Exhibit 52.
Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you.
All right, and is that correct from the city's perspective?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So I do want to say this, this matter is important to everyone who's participating in this process, but Mr. Mulero, I understand that it's obviously of greatest importance to you, sir. I commit to you and to all the parties that I will review the information that's been provided to me, including the transcript when received, as well as the briefs when received. I'm going to review that information and give you what I believe the evidence supports is the very best decision I can give you on this matter. I want to thank council for the very professional presentations and all of you for your flexibility, especially around day 2 concerning holding these hearings over Zoom. Is there anything further from the city?
No, sir.
Is there anything further from the union?
Nothing but just wishing all of you a great Thanksgiving, Christmas and Hanukkah season.
Likewise, I wish all of you a very happy Thanksgiving and holiday season. We are now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.